Good evening, and welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Medford Community Development Board. My name is Emily Hedeman. I'm the chair of the board, and I'll call the meeting to order. Let's begin with some obligatory procedural matters. This hearing of the Medford Community Development Board is being conducted via remote means. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. A reminder that anyone who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so by accessing the link that was included on the meeting agenda posted on the City of Medford website. If, despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide real-time access, we will post a recording of this meeting on the city's website as soon as possible. A reminder that given the remote nature of this meeting, tonight all votes from the board will be made by roll call. I would also like to add that in a former board member's absence, Jackie McPherson, Ben LaValle, who is an alternate board member, will be participating in her place. Please know that all project materials for all projects before the board can be viewed on the city's website, medfordma.org. By clicking on the current CD board filings, there will also be a link in the chat that Danielle or Alicia will put shortly. We're going to start with roll call attendance. Thanks for that, Alicia. Ari Goffman-Fishman.
Present.
Hey, Ari. Sabrina Alpino.
Present.
Hi, Sabrina. Adam Behrens.
Here.
Awesome. Annie Strang.
Present.
Ben LaValle.
Present.
Nice. Vice Chair Peter Calves. And myself, Chair Emily Hedeman, is present. Danielle, can you please introduce any staff on the call?
Yes, myself, Danielle Evans, Senior Planner of the Office Planning, Development, and Sustainability. We also have our Director, Alicia Hunt. We also have our Economic Development Director, Sal DiStefano, along with one of our student interns who'll be taking minutes tonight, Josh Needleman. And I believe that is everyone that we have with the city tonight. And we also have our outside legal counsel, Robin Stein, with us tonight.
Great. Thank you for that, Danielle. So we have a couple of matters before the board. The first item that we have is 401 Boston Ave. This is site plan review for a Dover amendment. The public hearing was closed at the January 15th, 2025 meeting. And what we're continuing this evening is the board deliberation. Board member Adam Behrens was not present for the January 15th meeting, but he has signed the Mullen Rule affidavit, and we do have that on file. And just as a reminder, I stated this earlier, but alternate member Ben LaValle is voting as a full member, as we don't have 7 full members present, and he has been in attendance for each of the meetings of this case. So with that, we are opening it up for board deliberation. I would like to remind the board that there's a couple questions before us. Does this use qualify as protected educational use under the Dover Amendment? And what are reasonable regulations that should be imposed on the use? We did hear a lot of public feedback with resistance to this project, but I just want to remind the board that based on our jurisdiction as the Community Development Board, those are the 2 questions in front of us today. I mean, is there any concern or doubt that 401 Boston Ave does not qualify under the Dover Amendment? I don't have doubts.
it is clear to me that it qualifies, kind of separate from my feelings about the design of the project. It is clear that it is a Dover Amendment use, and that has been confirmed by legal counsel to my satisfaction.
Yeah, not only the design, but also the community engagement process has left a lot to be desired. And while we do not have public comment at this period, the public is making their feelings very well known, and I do appreciate that. And while we may not be able to act fully per your hopes, we still need to do what's right by our board. So, assuming that, well, Annie, you're unmuted. Did you have any thoughts on the Dover Amendment aspect of 401 Boston? No.
No, I think the Dover Amendment is clear.
Adam, any questions from your rewatch of the hearing?
No questions. Maybe for the public, I attended all the previous meetings, and then the affidavit. I watched the entire deliberation from the last meeting. I think my views are, maybe Annie said it well in the last meeting. You know, there's a spirit of the law, and then there's the actual law. And I think that where I feel uncomfortable is that this just doesn't really feel in the spirit of what the Dover Amendment is trying to achieve. But that said, I think it's obvious that this does fall under that regulation.
Yeah, we're definitely being put in a very uncomfortable position.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
I will say that if this were not a Dover Amendment case, we would be going back to a whole lot of site plan review, without a doubt. We would not be.
I could not agree with you more, Ari. And while I respect the reason for the Dover Amendment, I think there needs to be a lot more critical thought put into how it is applied
within this community.
Within any community. I think.
But we're talking about this specific community, and I think that.
Yeah, and maybe I think what Annie is also, maybe to read between the lines too. I think what also I'm uncomfortable by is that Tufts is an ongoing member of this community. There's additional properties that adjoin this community, and there's additional matters that we know that the university will likely bring before the board. And I think we would appreciate more of a partnership in NSA, just in how that plays out.
And I'll actually even go beyond that, which is to kind of speak directly to Tufts. There is the letter of the law as you are interpreting it, and as I believe our lawyers are interpreting it too. And also you are members of a community. And I love this community, and I love many things about Tufts. I was a part of that community for many years too. And being a good partner may not pay immediate dividends in dollars and cents, but it absolutely pays dividends in the short, medium, and long term. And we are a community, and I urge you to take the community's concerns much more seriously than I have seen you do in this particular process.
That's why we're named the Community Development Board.
Very well said, Ari. I just want to sit with that for a little bit. So, even considering our displeasure with the process, with the project, even recognizing the need for more student housing. My general feeling is that the board will approve it, or is leaning towards approving the Dover amendment use. So what I want to talk about now is, if we do approve that Dover amendment use, what are some reasonable regulations that can be imposed? And the two aspects that Tufts has put before us where they want relief from the strict adherence to the zoning ordinance is the location of the parking on campus and the building setbacks. I think probably the parking may be the easiest one to agree to. Tufts is a campus. It doesn't make sense for them to have parking associated with each building, with each function. So I'm generally in agreement with a different location for parking. Curious if any other board members have any thoughts on that or any reasons why not on-site, any reasons why on-site parking should be required.
I have no objections to the parking as is, something that I think has been percolating and that I don't know how we can incorporate. But some form of enforcement mechanism of the many promises that have been made to make sure that they are carried out to both the letter and the spirit of trying to repair some of the harm that it is clear this project will do. I don't know if this is the moment to discuss that or not, but I kind of, as we start bringing that up, that is something I've been spending a lot of time thinking about.
So we do have the draft conditions that we reviewed at the last meeting, and we can review them again and we can add to them. We do have our legal counsel here. She can guide us, make sure that, we're imposing reasonable conditions, but we can certainly reopen that discussion. That's what board deliberations are for. And we can combine it with Tufts' request for the front yard setback relief. I guess I can pull up the conditions now.
Yeah, and something that I want to incorporate too is some of these longer term commitments. The trees, the kind of parking enforcement, the shuttle, the payment of the community funds. Once this building is built, we're not going to tear it down. That is that's wildly outside our scope. But what are some enforcement mechanisms we can have that we can put in from the beginning make sure that the small things that have been able to be won, at least those are ensured.
So I'd love to just get some clarification from city staff in terms of that process. Just speaking in general, whether it's the Tufts project or not, when the Community Development Board does put conditions on a project, how are those generally enforced? And Robin, if you have an answer.
Oh, sure. I wasn't sure if you were directing that to me or to Alicia or Danielle, but generally speaking, when a board acting on site plan or special permit or variance is usually a zoning decision with conditions, they would be enforced through the building commissioners, the zoning enforcement officer. So if the condition was being violated, usually the first step is either a conversation or a letter. And then eventually, if it's not being complied with, it's something that we might pursue in court. It's a little bit different for subdivision. So that's why I was just clarifying. But something like this, that is a site plan, the enforcement goes through the building commissioner's office.
So before they could get their certificate of occupancy, they would have to fulfill these.
So anything in the decision that has a specific timing to it has to be on that timing, whether it's before occupancy, before building permit, but then all the other conditions just survive forever. So if there's if there are other conditions that survive ongoing, like ongoing obligation to have the shuttle or whatever conditions survive past occupancy, those continue to be conditions of the approval. And if they were violated, then it would go through the building commissioner's office.
Danielle, do you have anything to add?
Yes, through the chair. As Attorney Stein mentioned, some of the conditions have, certain benchmarks when they need to be complete. So we like to tie those to either building permit, certificate of occupancy, things like that. And so at those different checkpoints, before those are done, the building commissioner makes through it and goes through and we'll check with the relevant staff who is kind of overseeing that, whether it's the engineering department or our office or the director of traffic transportation or fire, police, what have you. He checks and confirms that they're all set and that they have met that condition in order to receive whatever that is that they're seeking.
Okay. So curious, Ari, if that kind of general process satisfies your question in terms of like enforcement.
I guess I'm kind of trying to remember, and my computer's being slow of like, is there a timeline of how, like, is there a guarantee that the shuttle will run so long as the building is standing or the building is a dorm? Is there an end date there for something like the community fund? I know that it was intentionally not put in the city's control so that there was the possibility to individually compensate owners, but kind of what is the public notification and transparency around what payments are going out on what timeline, and how will both we and the many members of the very interested public know that that's happening as promised.
Yeah, I like what you're saying in terms of, I don't know if it applies for all of these, but how do we make them smart conditions?
Yeah, so I think you just need to look at the conditions. I know you reviewed them at the last meeting, but you certainly can look at them again now and just make sure that they read the way that you want them to read.
Yeah.
I mean, the only caution I'll give is because the public hearing is closed, an opportunity to kind of discuss those with Tufts has passed. That's something that you did during the public hearing. So just you want to keep that in mind if you're really dramatically changing anything. But, the conditions should have the timings associated with them.
Yep.
But everything survives, forever as a condition, so long as the permit's being used. So
Danielle?
I just wanted to mention that regarding the community fund, and I'm trying to open up my conditions document too. This is something that the university conceived of and offered. So the city does not want to be, closely involved with that. So I pretty much, we put this in the condition document to like memorialize that summary of commitments that Tufts made, but this isn't really something that we will be monitoring per se, but I defer to Director Hunt and our legal counsel because this was between Tufts and the neighborhood, and I just wanted to memorialize it. I don't know if there's summary of what they're offering, if there's anything legally binding that they can do aside from this decision.
Yeah, so this is the condition that we're speaking to here. And I am sharing screen, so I might not be able to see people's hands being raised. So board members, if you'd like to discuss, just unmute yourself and we'll talk through it.
And this is me proposing an idea, and I see kind of lots of decision points coming out of it. So kind of fully acknowledging that as I say it, do we want to include a reporting mandate here of like the Tufts will publish to the public an annual report of the amount spent? We can
like
see
that.
privacy concerns about the names. On the other hand, I think there's a lot of value to transparency. And I would
think
be
there
interested
could
in hearing.
be, yeah, and maybe there's some guidelines or like some minimum data points for reporting. So maybe it says, I don't know, like type of, like type of aid. And I know, because I know some of the specific comments were around like solar panels and energy generation. So maybe there's broad categories. I don't want to be so prescriptive that, you know, we ruminate on this forever, but I like what you're saying in terms of reporting and maybe, yeah.
What about just reporting on progress of all of the conditions? I mean, just confirming that the applicant follows through on everything, right? Like, so I don't know what the right wording would be, but something along the lines of, you know, Tufts reports on, funding disbursement in the case of this community fund, but it'd be good to get like a readout and a confirmation that everything that was agreed to or conditioned is actually implemented, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to have that for all of our projects, to be honest, but especially this one.
Yeah, I will say that I think there is value in it being not overly prescriptive, but providing a sufficient minimum detailed guardrail, thus that the letter of the agreement does not allow something like a one sentence report in an annual report that says we did the thing.
Well, I think it's also I agree with Ari, and I think it's also in the applicant's interest, right? I mean, some of this is sort of best effort type wording, right? And so if in fact they're unable to meet one of the conditions, but they put forward best effort, it's actually in the applicant's interest to make the public aware of that, right?
Maybe we could say something like, because I know those conditions you're talking about, Ben. We could say, what was it? I think it was a tree one was best available. Commercially reasonable efforts.
Right. I think the public rightfully will, you know, go back and check these conditions. And if if that doesn't happen, I think it's in Tufts' interest to at least be clear as to what commercially reasonable efforts were made and just explain it. So I don't know what the best enforcement mechanism is, but something along the lines of like, I mean, we're talking about 25 conditions, some sort of report out on a regular basis once a year or however often we think is appropriate. Couldn't hurt.
What about if not able to fulfill, they can propose an alternate? Is that too nebulous? What do we think? I know that like this is MBTA property, National Grid property. Like if they can't plant trees there, then you know those sites are kind
And
of.
there's a few such things, right? Like the Blue Bike station, right? Is probably not entirely in Tufts' control to get that installed, right? They're going to have to collaborate with other entities in order to make some of these happen.
Yeah, so this one's a definite.
Yeah, I guess there's part of me that's also thinking about ones that will impact people, things like the dedicated ride share. We talked about enforcement and how they agreed to use TUPD to assist with enforcement. But kind of that things like the shades, they committed that shades will be built in if they stop working, if the students tear them out. students are creative when they don't like their living spaces.
Oh, definitely no. What about
And while I would love to operate under a good faith assumption, I think that much of this process has shown that the neighborhood needs to use its legal rights as much as Tufts has.
Yeah, and then I think like kind of from both directions, I think it's pretty fair to say I think there's probably a lack of trust on
yeah.
part with Tufts, and I honestly feel like it's in Tufts' best interest to have some sort of mechanism to have this synthesized in a way that people don't have to fish around for it, that the decision making was made clear, because I do think that the base assumption will be, well, yeah, Tufts was cutting corners, and they promised stuff and they never intended to do it.
What about, I'm thinking of ways that we can kind of combine all these commitment tracking questions that we're having. And one thought that just came to mind was like, maybe there's like an annual or biannual like listening session where they report on fund disbursement. They, I don't even know if this is possible, but like, they do an annual audit of blind and shade conditions with student turnover.
Yeah, Emily, that's
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking was actually like an additional condition that basically
Yeah.
says we're going to do some sort of readout of the conditions on a regular basis, or the status update or something.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Ben, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good, Ari. I don't know the best way to do that, whether it's a public meeting where they just do a status update, or whether there's,
Yeah.
I don't know the best format. So go ahead, Ari.
Yeah, I was kind of jumping off of that. I see the value to having a public hearing, and also I recognize that kind of many people have childcare challenges, et cetera, to getting to things. And they are not obligated to do anything with that feedback. So I think part of what I'm imagining, and I don't think this is sufficient, but I think part of it is a written report with like percent, and like include something like percent fulfillment of each of these and mitigation steps for where it's below an acceptable threshold. And I know I'm getting into math and legal terms, so pardon me for kind of thinking out loud. And I do think having something written submitted to the town, and if we can put in something of like, if it is not acceptable, and that we're just going to put a parentheses there of that's a separate issue, what can the city do to fix that situation? And like, yeah. And maybe it's that and a meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can have a public hearing, because I don't think there'll be anything really to hear, because to your point, we can't like once these conditions are conditioned, part of the reason why I'm going to put works in quotation marks, but part of the reason why a community development board or a planning board or a zoning board works is because we have a consistent process. And we hear every matter along the same guidelines, and we give the applicant something that they can move forward with on their project. So we can't, like 6 months from now, for better or for worse, we can't go back and be like, oh, actually, like we wanted XYZ. That's not right. I know we could spend a lot of time talking about what is and isn't right in this topic, but based on the restrictions we have today. So what I was starting to do is try to highlight, or I guess de-emphasize, conditions that are kind of black and dry, black and white, cut and dry. Thank you all. It's already been a long work day, but I'm happy to be here for this important topic. So yeah, like we have a 24/7 contact for construction related questions, but is there a way we can mimic that for like community questions or concerns? Alicia?
I wanted to understand if by that you meant during the construction or forever, because I'll just, I don't know if members of the board are aware that Rico is supposed to be the community contact, that whenever there's been a resident concern, I've always been told to tell the resident to contact Rocco and his office, and it's not 24/7.
Oh
But
yeah,
if
no.
you have a middle of the night concern, you maybe should be calling the police, not
Yeah.
Rocco. But I just did want to state that that exists. And if anybody doesn't know that, I'm sharing that.
That's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to talk it out a little bit. I struggle to see what would sort of come up from a community concern perspective, or there's certain points where the community input is valuable because like the ship hasn't sailed, right?
Yeah.
And I think what's a little bit frustrating is, well, okay, after this, it kind of feels like, okay, the ship sailed. And yeah, with a lot of these, like there's a value in the update itself, just for the transparency perspective. And then I think, from a community board perspective, well, I think that informs future discussions and all of that. But it's hard for me to see what we really.
Yeah, like what would the outcome be for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
and
good
I think, it's valuable to, and so, just a response to like, yeah, it's probably not 24/7, but it's probably some, some type of cadence over the length of the project, to voice the concerns and for us to just transparently know. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
So some of the
Emily,
yeah.
can I just make a suggestion that may be helpful? Keeping in mind that this is a Dover use and that you can't overly burden necessarily the conditions. So things that Tufts would agree to are great. We don't know at this point, but I think in my opinion, it would be reasonably defensible to the extent that there are particular conditions that are not going to be easily verifiable, right? Like construction conditions, the building inspector is easily going to verify, if a tree got planted, but some of the things that, you might, maybe not easily be able to tell if they've been complied with. I think it would be reasonable to have a condition, if you guys want to consider this, that just says that, once a year, Tufts will provide a writing to the board, just updating on the status of compliance with, say, condition 16, 18, 20, whatever they are. And then the board can receive that. And if the board wants to discuss it in a public meeting, they can put it on for discussion. And if the board's satisfied that there's compliance, that's great. And if not, they can refer to the building commissioner to investigate any kind of, enforcement of the condition.
Okay.
But I don't think I would put the burden on of everything, right? Because certain, building construction conditions, they probably don't need to independently verify. That's going to happen in the natural course. But if there's a couple that you're concerned with just knowing are accomplished, I think it would be fair to take an approach like that if that's something the board wants to consider.
Okay. How does the rest of I think that makes sense. And I think that kind of aligns with like the spirit of the question, or the original topic of discussion. Danielle?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the intention here is reporting on progress towards these conditions that have an end date to be complied with. The
Or-
perpetual ones would be,
don't.
yeah, some of these won't even be, come due until they've received their certificate of occupancy and their lodging licenses. So they're kind of years off.
Yeah, and that's fine. They can come back. The Community Development Board
Yeah.
should hopefully still be in action, even if the
But for
faces
the-
have changed.
For the perpetual conditions,
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work, because that's not something that we've put on other projects to report annually that they.
I think we could put a specific time period, during the construction, or maybe until like 12 months after certificate of occupancy. So at that point, I'm assuming that the building's been fully leased up. The students have moved in. Ubers have picked up. DoorDash has been dropped off.
I will
Yeah,
say
what-
that the
what about-
public is the best at being the eyes and ears of whether a developer is complying with perpetual conditions.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the developers already put so much of a burden on the public anyways, just through
No, but I'm just saying,
building
like,
alone. The last thing I
that-
want to do is,
yes, but they don't need to report on,
why don't we talk through
Yeah.
the ones that we would potentially want them to report on, and then we can see, does it make sense?
I, for example, do think it's not something the public should have to do, is to like go around and canvass every household to find out, did you receive money? I think it is
Yes.
very reasonable to ask Tufts to,
So,
on a regular basis, disclose how much they have paid to and to whom.
so just to help us get organized, I'm going to propose that we highlight conditions that we think should have some sort of reporting aspect to it. Sound like a good approach? Great. So we are starting off with some kind of like engineering, construction, design related ones. These are fairly standard. But board, please speak up if you think any of these should be highlighted.
No, those seem pretty standard and have other entities that have to be involved already anyway, right? Building
Yeah.
departments and stuff like that.
And then I would say the same for the engineering division conditions. These two we have infiltration, inflow mitigation, more water, sewer. Here we have the blue bike and the shuttle. And just to be clear, I don't want to discuss these now. I just want to flag them so we can kind of see the whole collection. Does anybody disagree that these are ones that we could have reporting around?
I think those are good.
Okay.
Yeah. I could also imagine for 14A, as part of a report, like the number of calls that were made to TUPD or Medford about that area. And if everything's working great, they put in, there were 8 calls in a year. That's perfectly reasonable. It's something that they should be recording anyway. It's all very easy to find. But I think that is something that
Okay.
if the answer is hundreds, the public will then do what the public does.
Yes, and I trust that they will. Let's keep going and see if there's others we want to highlight. These are health department. And then we got into some of the light spillage mitigation. We've already talked about a couple of these. I highlighted these, but any disagreements here? And this 20, I think, would be, similar to what you said for the drop off, like count of complaints. We have trees.
The only thing I would
Yeah.
like to add to adding new trees is the caretaking of those trees. If they don't water them, then the trees will not flourish and we'll just have to go I'm not cool with the idea that if the trees die per contract, they come back a year later and replant them because we've lost a year of growth. So I would rather if they plant trees, they take care of them, water them.
We can refine that.
That also includes pruning, fertilizing, disease control, etc.
Correct.
Yeah, I think we can keep that loose.
Yeah.
Maintain the trees in healthy condition.
Yeah. So the other one is condition 25, the Neighborhood Improvement Fund. We've already talked about that a good amount. I did not highlight the City of Medford Affordable Housing Trust Fund, just because it's a one-time donation. They either will or they won't, but they have to, per these conditions. And then 26 and 27 are draft ones that we may or may not put forth. Okay. So what metrics could we put in here? Do we want to specify the duration of recurring annual fees? I think this is fine because it implies, they pay for it as long as the station's there.
Do we want to include something like if they choose to decommission, they need to communicate to the city, and something like, I don't know, if in 15 years we're all operating on flying hoverboards, we're not going to be, but like, if it makes sense to put in a flying hoverboard station, fine. That's kind of in the spirit, but I do think that
I want to include stuff about hoverboards in here, but I get what you're saying.
please do not. That was me being
I know.
totally tired at the end of the day.
I know. I do appreciate, the tone that we have here. This is a very impactful thing. So status changes of the dock station shall be coordinated with the Director of Traffic and Transportation, including decommissioning, vendor changes, including but not limited to. Any other thoughts here? Okay. And we'll read through the rest of them once we get through. So Ben, I know that you have mentioned the shuttle service a couple times, so I don't know if you had any initial thoughts there.
I think they suggested that it would operate similarly to one that they run for Davis Square.
Okay.
I don't know what kind of report out we should or even could require. There's also nuance that came up in the last meeting where, it's not a year-round service. So I don't know. I don't know if this one. I think it's a nice condition. I think there's community benefit to the condition. I just don't know what the right way to make sure it happens is.
I mean, reporting could be around usage, and that may let us know, like, is this
something that it makes sense to continue?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe similar to something like, first, whatever, couple of years or a year or
Yeah.
whatever frequency makes sense. I don't want to put an undue burden on the applicant either, but, they did say that this was something they were comfortable with.
I have a question about the actual bus or vehicle. Is it an EV?
I'm so sorry, Annie. I don't want to get into that. I think
No,
I
I'm
we're.
just curious if
I don't know.
Rocco said that it was going to be essentially the same service that they provide to Davis Square. I don't know enough about that service and what types of vehicles it is, but it's probably something we could find out.
Okay. So how does that look? Reporting on usage. The first 24 months to the CEDB on a biannual, twice per year basis.
That seems reasonable to me for that condition. I don't know. Happy to hear other opinions too.
Okay. Looking at the next one. Let's see. How does that look? Applicant will provide a report on the number of calls. I might stick with this first 24 months on a biannual, twice per year basis. Okay. Any other thoughts on those?
I am a little concerned about limiting it to only 24 months.
Okay.
This is a building that's going to be a massive investment for a very long time. I think annual after a certain period would be perfectly reasonable. But I am thinking on like the 10+ year scale on this. This will continue to impact the community, and I do want to make sure that the accountability and transparency continues.
Are you saying that for just for condition 14 or also 13?
13 as well.
Okay. What about this language? After 24 months, the Community Development Board will reevaluate the frequency of this reporting. Robin, can we even say something like that, or is that too nebulous?
So I guess I caution, and again, I don't know what Tuss will be agreeable or not, but that if you're going to put reporting burdens on them, they may push back and say that is a burden on our protected use. And so I do caution as you're putting these on to give some thought to, one, is this information you could obtain otherwise? So for example, you could ask the police department, Tufts doesn't necessarily need to get that information, but, also for 14, what is the use of the board having that information? Like, the condition is what it is. You can't change it later.
Yeah. That's the same for all of these. I'm just trying to address board concerns around.
Yeah, no, I'm just pointing it out because obviously in my role, I want to make sure the board understands that, they could get some pushback or, an appeal of conditions. So I'm encouraging you to put them on in a way that, I think doesn't create an undue burden. And so I just think that it makes sense to balance the utility of the condition with what you could do with that information.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am less worried about having like data twice a year for the first 2 years. I think some form of usage has value to the committee in terms of evaluating when we're looking at future conditions with Tufts and with other bodies, like how our things that we agree to actually being utilized and what impact does it have on the community. I think that is a genuine function. I think in terms of undue burden, having an annual report where all of this is consolidated, these are fairly easy conditions, I think, and if needed, I could rank which ones are kind of most important to me, and kind of the transparency around the neighborhood improvement fund is up there, but I think reporting on the utilization of community resources, there is a genuine community interest in that. And I'm open to hearing otherwise, but that's where I'm coming from.
Okay. So with that in mind, let's move on to the light spillage mitigation and screening conditions. I honestly don't see any reporting that could be associated with condition 20. But I do get that this condition is rather nebulous. Looking at 21, I mean, this could start to approach.
That one I could see being onerous. Operable kind of does imply they need to work.
Okay.
I don't know who's going to check that, but I urge the community to assist in making sure that this gets utilized.
Yeah, it's very rare for a student to fill out a conditions of unit report and submit it back to their landowner in reasonable time. Let's see. And then we had some feedback about the trees added. Yeah, I think adding and maintained may hit what we're trying to say for maintain for the life of the building. And okay. So in terms of this community fund, I think if we put in this timing requirement around reporting, there could be the assumption that the board will ask specific questions. So it's in Tufts' best interest to come armed with information. Armed is probably the wrong word. To come prepared with information, and then it can be on the board to dive deeper in terms of information associated with this.
So, Emily,
Yeah.
and again, I don't want to overstep, but the last sentence of this says that the city is going to have no involvement with the establishment or administration of the fund.
But we can still hear what's happening with the fund. And we're not going to influence it. We're not going to determine how funds are expended. We just want to hear how this fund is going.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure that
Director.
Robin, so the concern here from the city is our legal involvement with money that might be going directly to individuals. And we needed to protect the city, which is why we include the statement that the city will have no involvement. So I just want to make sure that anything the board adds on reporting doesn't open the city up for some liability around that, just because of the nature of such a thing.
Yeah, to me,
I think-
reporting is different than administration.
I agree, and I'm also open to wording it in thus a way that the reporting is public or like delivered to the city and X, so that even if we aren't able to do anything with it, the public will have clear access to that information that feels important, Danielle.
Well, if
Yeah.
the report is submitted to the Community Development Board, due to open meeting law, that information is then therefore publicly available. You do have to do a little bit of searching, but it will be available. Danielle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the most important thing is the transparency aspect. I don't think that it needs to be reported to us because we're not requiring the fund. We're not involved with the fund. We don't want to get mixed up with violations of the anti-aid amendment, which is.
So who could they report to?
What if they just posted have a web page associated with this that they regularly update that would be available to everyone? So they're not submitting reports to the city because we're not involved with this. I don't want the reports. We want to stay out of it.
Okay.
But if we're curious, we'll just go on their webpage and see where the funds have gone. And maybe could have a little ticker and they could have a pie chart of however they want. If they're just writing checks for 10K to every abutter who's shaded, then that's what it says on the webpage. But I don't think we need to be receiving reports. And then if the public wants it, they have to file Freedom of Information Act requests. It just becomes the whole thing. I just think we can get.
Yeah, it is
what we want on
touchy
the
territory, and I hear that. What about the applicant will maintain a publicly accessible resource that details fund usage, disbursement. I can delete, etc.
Maybe updated at least once a year.
Updated at least once a year until all funds are dispersed. Then they don't have to do anything after that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So do we see any reason for the contact line for community-related questions? That feels duplicative of Tufts' existing efforts.
Agreed.
Okay. And then we have embedded reporting conditions kind of within everything. So I think
Get rid of that one too.
we can get rid of this one, but let's look back through kind of like as a collection of what we've added. Okay, so we didn't touch those. I think this one's fine. The blue bikes status changes shall be coordinated. And that should not impose undue burden. And now we get into reporting. Applicant required reporting. And I see it both ways. What are we going to actually do with this information? I agree with your sentiment, Ari, on, it'll help us with the effectiveness of these sort of conditions in the long term. Yeah. Does anybody see any issues with these? 2 reports a year. Well, I guess it's 2 here, 2 here. Yeah, and then effectively a Excel chart. If that is undue burden on the applicant, then we've got other problems. Any thoughts from the board? Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you all for putting up with my typing on screen. I appreciate it. So just to plug us back into like the 2 questions or the questions that are at hand. One is Dover Amendment use. And I know the board is aligned, or appears to be aligned. And then we just talked through the reasonable regulations. Doesn't sound like anybody really had any issue with the parking being not located on site. And then the other relief that the applicant is asking for is the front yard setbacks. Alicia?
There were two others, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure that those don't get lost. I realize that those weren't in the document, but it was around having a primary building in the rear yard and then having multiple buildings on a single lot.
So those have not been in any of the documents.
They were in their application. So I asked, I think Robin had a suggestion for us that we should just approve the application as submitted, and that because these are not waivers the way one normally does a waiver. So if you just approve the application as submitted, then it encompasses the project as it was presented to you without having to worry about any of the individual things. The one about the having a primary building in the backyard was essentially, it was discussed once at the very beginning, and it was pointed out that it didn't make any sense for this project or any Tufts project because they're on a campus. And so it just came through very quickly as oh, right, of course not. Of course you would, this is multiple and this is the backyard of another building. And our zoning was changed around the multiple buildings on a lot. So in some zones, it's allowed by special permit by the CD board.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to declare a quick recess.
Mhm.
Let's reconvene back in 5 minutes. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. We're going to wait for board members to come back on screen. Sabrina, can you just throw your screen on when you get back? Yeah, awesome. We got Annie, Ben, Adam. All right, cool, great. Okay. So I wanted to get a little bit more detail about those two other items that were just mentioned. More than one building on a single lot, and then related to the back building. Danielle, can you give us a little bit more background on those? I just want to make sure that we as a board are going in fully understanding.
Yes. So I would compare this to the same issues with you have a campus and there are multiple buildings on a campus, and there are kind of some quirky things in our ordinance that have always been there, things that were changed and there were unintended consequences, and then amendments to kind of fix those unintended consequences that didn't quite fix them, and we're hoping maybe in the next round updates we fix them. But basically it's in most of the zoning districts, not more than 2 structures is allowed on a lot.
Okay.
And that was in response to some historic preservation concerns with tear downs and building multiple buildings. So at one point there was an amendment that was passed at some point, not allowing that. And then we tried to fix it so that you could build more than 2 structures on a lot by right in most zoning districts. And Alicia, I may need you to call up that language because I don't have the most amended language. This is in the apartment 1 zone, which I'm pretty sure.
Why don't we just pause with that description and see if board members have any questions? I mean, it makes sense to me. This was a regulation that was passed as a good idea, and then the actual implementation of it is a challenge, which is why it is before us today, those 2 specific ones. Okay. The board has no questions on those 2. Then
I am thinking through this out loud. I will share that I did not understand that these were also things that we needed to approve. My understanding was that the only options we had were Dover Amendment, the parking, and the setback. This seems to be in line with some of the concerns. It seems to not be a boilerplate issue. Like, I think it sounds like having a large building is in fact the intent, or like not having a large building is in fact the intent of that ordinance. Am I misunderstanding? Alicia, I would love to hear more detail.
That's actually completely misunderstanding. Completely.
Okay, please
I would
clarify.
recommend have Robin explain it. The one about multiple buildings is that it used to say in our zoning that in any district, 2 principal structures shall not be permitted on the same lot other than in the MUS district. And we we said that's crazy because that makes all kinds of things illegal. And of course you would want multiple buildings on a single lot in many cases. And when we went to change the language that we included accidentally left the word not in, saying, so the new language said are not permitted when the change was supposed to be are permitted. But I'd really like to, so that wasn't in fact at all. It had nothing to do with preventing Tufts or anybody from doing these things. I think that the project has been presented to the board in a lot of detail, and that I hope you understand the project. This is not a 40B project. A 40B project, one has to approve every single waiver. This is not a project where one approves the waivers. This is a project where one approves the project as it is. If the board were to put any conditions on it, the only conditions that would be allowable are ones that are where they're going outside of our zoning. To say that they can't put multiple buildings on a lot is actually would be silly because they're a campus. That's how it works. And the other one was around not having having a building in the backyard of another building, which honestly, I didn't even realize was in our zoning until they called it out in their application. It's never come up before. So that was sort of where we were kind of going with this. My concern was that if you approve it with 2 specific exceptions to zoning, you're approving not necessarily what they presented, and you're unintentionally putting conditions on it. So the recommendation from the legal counsel, who I think can speak for herself, but she was limited availability after 8 o'clock, was to make a motion to approve the application as revised through the January 15th, subject to the conditions discussed, and then make specific findings why it's Dover and why the site plan prevents reasonable application of the zoning ordinance to this project. Is that clear?
That is much clearer.
So, yes, there are 4 items of relief, but the 2 that would actually have an impact are parking and setback. One of the other items of relief is due to literally a typo. And then the other is this weird back building thing, which may also have been included in error. So I'm less concerned with those 2. We've talked about parking. We have not touched on setback. So if it's all right with the board, I'd like to just kind of socialize setback. And we did see presentation from the applicant reviewing the difference between what is required for setback and what they're proposing for setback. I don't know if board members have any thoughts on those. I think the impact is minor. I mean, what the public really wants is a shorter building and a better community engagement process, and these setbacks are not it. So, does anybody have any reluctance to the relief for the front yard setbacks? No. Okay. So what I'd be looking for is a motion to approve the application as submitted with conditions. If a member of the board is not comfortable making that motion, I'm happy to make it myself. All right, so I will make a motion to approve the application as submitted with conditions. I'm looking for a second.
I will second that.
Thank you. We are going to do a roll call vote. I am going to vote first. I, Chair Emily Hedeman, am an aye. Sabrina Alpino. Sorry, Sabrina, you cut out. Aye. Adam Behrens.
Aye.
Annie Strang.
Aye.
Ben LaValle.
Aye.
And Ari Goffman Fishman.
There are enough ayes that it already passed, so I'll abstain.
Great. So with great reluctance, the motion passes. And I hope to never see a project like this in front of us ever again, with this sort of horrible community engagement. Horrible community engagement.
Totally agree.
Be a better neighbor. And with that, we're going to move on to our next matter. I do want to thank members of the public for showing up consistently. So the next item that we have is the Bridle Path definitive subdivision. This is a continued hearing. Do we have a member of the applicant team here? I know Attorney Desmond has been representing the applicant.
Madam Chair, I do see that she is here.
I see her as well. Just asked her to unmute.
Am I in? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Attorney Desmond.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm using one of those new fangled connectors that allows us all to speak, and I just wanted to make sure it worked. But thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Desmond, do you have any updated plans or documents to present?
We do. We received 2 memos from the engineering department, January 17th, 2025 and January 27th. And we did update our plans to comply with those requests. And if I can share my screen, I will I'll bring up that plan. So can everybody see that?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay. So basically there were 4 buckets of items that the city engineer required us to look at. The first being areas to be clear of vertical obstructions so that could accommodate fire apparatus along the cul-de-sac. And you'll note that these are the 3 areas, they're marked on the plans, that need to be clear of obstructions. We have removed 2 trees from that area in accordance with the request to keep vertical obstructions out of that area. We agreed to provide language in the HOA to ensure that going forward, no vertical obstructions are located within the area. And we did confirm with the city engineer that the utilities being brought in on Bridle Path will be underground. So there shouldn't be any issue with regard to construction in that area. And we've also noted that we'll make sure that all of the utility companies are aware that vertical obstructions cannot be located in those areas due to fire access. The second bucket essentially of requests dealt with curbing and sidewalks. The engineer had requested that we modify the plan and extend the sidewalk and granite curbing southward along Franklin Avenue. And that has been done on the plan. The third area of concern was driveways. There was a need to confirm that the driveway apron materials will be cement concrete. And as you see on the plan, each of those driveways is detailed as containing bit concrete. And there is also on the legend a legend so that can be easily seen on the plan. In addition to that, we had to adjust the width of the driveway apron for lot 7. Inadvertently, it was greater than the allowed width of 20 feet. And the last set of concerns dealt with signage. The city engineer wanted us to incorporate the legend and the markers which were in the traffic report, and that has been done, as you'll see over here. And then relocate and adjust signage for Winthrop Street properties so as not to interfere with the ADA access to the sidewalk. So we did adjust the location of the sign. And I believe that addressed all of the engineer's concerns that in the 2 memos that he had provided to us. In addition to that, we also did provide staff with a proposed certificate of approval and also a draft covenant to review.
Thank you for that. I see Danielle has her hand raised. Danielle?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the draft certificate of approval that Attorney Desmond had prepared was provided in your packets.
Mm-hmm.
However, we are proposing a few changes to that the applicant has agreed to. One of those is with the second condition about blasting.
Yep.
So they wanted to be able to blast, even though they didn't think they needed to blast. But given the history with the adjacent subdivision, we want to have a no blasting condition, but with leaving the option for the developer to come back to the CD board if there is some extenuating circumstance where they, absolutely must blast rather than, perform chipping. They would have to make an argument, but we wanted to keep that open. But that the default would not be to just, start blasting things, because that's probably easier, but much more, could be more damaging to neighboring foundations and also PTSD and all that stuff. It's not fun to be next to. And there was another condition. So for the covenant, that won't be signed until after the appeal period tolls, and when you would endorse the plan. So tonight you would only be voting to approve the application for the definitive site plan, not endorsing or signing anything until the appeal period tolls. I was advised by legal, who I was talking to. Had hoped that Robin would still be on, but that took a little bit longer to help with making sure everything was included in this. But she was comfortable that subdivision control law requires a surety or some kind of legal instrument or bond that would ensure that the road and the utilities are completed. And that could be determined after. And that it's pretty much the applicant's choice how they want to provide that. So with the no blasting condition, except if they come back and get permission, those are the only changes to the certificate of approval that I had. Kathy, do you recall that anything else that we had discussed? Things are starting to get a little jumbled. There was a lot of last minute information I was trying to synthesize today. So if I missed anything, please let me know.
We did discuss a construction management plan acceptable, satisfactory to the building commissioner. And in that regard, Danielle, if we leave it satisfactory to the building commissioner rather than all of the details, I think, the plan and the covenant provides that the roadway gets built first and utilities get installed prior to release of the lots. And I think that's what his concern was within sequencing. But if we leave it to his satisfaction or satisfactory, then if it is still a concern in terms of sequencing of what lots get built, then he can indicate it's not satisfactory.
Yes, thank you so much for reminding me. So that is condition number. Where is that? About the construction management plan.
I don't know that we had that in the draft, the draft certificate of approval. But, that we have no objection to that being added and changing the language to the blasting, on the blasting. I don't believe it was included in the original.
Okay.
And I also noticed, and I had sent you an email during the meeting, that number 27 of the conditions actually addresses the issue with performance guarantee. And so I think that covers it. It basically mirrors the statute.
Yeah.
Okay.
So through the chair, so apologies, Chair, that we're hashing this out. So the modification to condition 2 about the blasting, and then another condition requiring the submission of a construction management plan prior to issuance of which should be building permit or.
I'm sorry, Danielle, I don't see.
I believe that's for construction of the roadway, and the construction in total. I believe the commissioner's concern dealt with the easement and access to the easement. So it would be within all of the construction. So no permits will issue until a satisfactory construction management plan has been filed with the building commissioner.
And my apologies, Madam Chair. It's so the document is called the draft certificate of approval.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. These look familiar now. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the board for questions and comments. And then we will open the public comment period.
I believe that the public comment period was closed at the last.
Was it? Yeah, I think we did.
I don't recall if we closed it or if you just closed it that. I don't think you closed the public hearing. I think it was just the period for that day.
I think I had asked the question at that point because we were at the point where it was only whether or not the engineer had provided, and you had comments that were standing, and we asked at that point whether the public comment period for the project had closed, and I believe that the board indicated that in fact it had, because we were at deliberation and we couldn't address the comments because it was an internal memo from engineering to staff and to the board.
Yeah, and I know we did receive a couple public comments the first time you all came in front of us. I don't believe we received many additional more. The meeting on the 15th. Do we have draft meeting minutes that you could check? I'm going through.
That was January 15th. I don't have them for January 15th. There might be an AI summary. I think there was an AI summary. I mean, we could see if there is anybody here that wanted to speak on this matter, and if not,
Yeah, I just want to respect the process for the applicant as well. Oh, sorry, Kathy, I accidentally muted you. I didn't mean to do that. There you go. Danielle, are you able to reference the AI notes?
I'm looking for the email.
Okay, thank you. In the meantime, do any members of the board have any questions or comments for the applicant related to the updates? I do think that the no blasting is a very thoughtful change, especially considering the impacts to that neighborhood for adjacent projects. I like the other updates I've seen, so thank you.
Fortunately, it's not specific enough. It just says that we continued the public hearing, but that might have been a semantics thing.
Okay.
It said the board voted to continue the hearing to February 5th to allow time for the applicant and city staff to address the engineer's comments.
So I'm leaning towards reopening the public comment, just because if there were changes made by the engineer, we would want some opportunity to comment on those. I do think that the applicant has been very, very, reasonable with public comment, and I don't think that there has been a lot of. I think the changes that we could have implemented through conditions have been addressed in some way. So if the applicant, but I do want to make sure that we are procedurally not leaving anything open. And I know it's a risk, so I appreciate you all taking this risk with me. Okay, so seeing no questions or comments from the board, I'm going to now open the public comment period. Those who wish to provide comments can use the raise hand function or message Danielle in the chat if you're having technical difficulties. You can also send an email to ocd@medford-ma.gov. Before providing your comments, please state your name and address for the record. I will remind you as well. A reminder to all meeting participants to please refrain from using the chat function to message any comments to city staff or board members, as it's not part of the public record. However, if a participant is having audio or other technical difficulties, you can message staff for assistance. Again, that's Danielle and Alicia. Each participant will have 2 minutes to speak, and you will have an opportunity to speak once. If you do have additional comments beyond the time, or in addition to your first and only comment, then you can email those to ocd@medford-ma.gov. So if anybody has public comments related to the Bridle Path definitive subdivision, please raise your hand. Alicia, are you seeing any hands, any comments? Have you received any new emails that have come through?
Madam Chair, so it's out loud and people can hear. I also don't see any hands raised. I haven't received any chat messages, and there are no new emails in our mailbox.
Okay. So seeing no public comments, I'm going to close the public comment period for this meeting as well as for this matter. And I'm going to reopen it to the board for deliberation. I know we didn't have any questions or comments, but are there any conditions we want to go over? Kind of playing clerk and and chair in this meeting, but I can bring up the conditions. Where did I just have them? If we want to pop through those. And just to confirm, Danielle and Alicia, these feature the conditions that we were just speaking about. I saw the blasting. Where is it? Which one is it? I think these are both the same one. Yeah, so you'll see here, item 2, no blasting. If they do, they have to return to the Community Development Board. Construction management plan.
You might want to, you could refresh maybe, we'd have to redo the numbering, but for the construction management plan, I put the applicant shall submit a construction management plan for approval from the building commissioner prior to commencement of any construction activities. That could be wordsmith a little bit if put it in better legalese.
Yeah, I'm not able to edit on the web, so I've been downloading them. So I think I just didn't have the latest download. Let me try that again. I'll share. Let's share a new window. Thanks for everyone's patience with that. Okay, so we got the construction management plan. So we're going to ignore the numbers for now. Right away, lighting, sidewalk. And I can't see if any members of the board have their hands raised or are unmuted. But please unmute yourself and speak if you have any questions or comments for these conditions for Bridle Path.
I don't have any, Emily.
Thank you, Annie. Yeah, some of these are extremely technical and are from city staff. Okay. So questions for the poll, or I'm sorry, questions for the board. Do we feel like we're ready to vote? Is there any information that we're looking for to help educate us, inform our decision?
I think a proposal should be made to vote.
Okay. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the application for a definitive subdivision subject to conditions.
I make that motion to.
Thank you, Annie. Looking for a second.
I can
A second.
Oh, Sabrina can have it.
Thank you, Sabrina. We are going to do a roll call vote. Ari Goffman-Fishman,
Aye.
Sabrina Alpino,
Aye.
Adam Behrens,
Aye.
Annie Strang,
Aye.
Ben LaValle,
Aye.
and myself, Emily Hedeman, is an aye. Thank you, Attorney Desmond. Thank you to the applicant.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the board's efforts in this matter and consideration, as
Of
well
course.
as staff. Thank you.
Of course, I appreciate your patience around the public comment confusion, but
Yes.
so we took the conservative approach, which is hopefully the right one.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Have a nice evening. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is we're not discussing it tonight, but we did want to mention the Salem Street corridor. There is a Q&A meeting, question and answer meeting, next Monday, the 10th, at the Roberts Elementary School regarding the Salem Street corridor proposed zoning amendment. So we're not going to be discussing this amendment. We're not accepting public comment this evening. We may at future meetings. But we just want to be really clear that we're not going to be discussing it. I think there'll be some really good info presented in that session next Monday, and look forward to hearing more. But we're not going to be doing public comment tonight. We're not going to be discussing Salem Street. What I do need is a motion from a member of the board to continue the public hearing for the Salem Street corridor zoning amendment to the March 5th CDB meeting.
So moved.
Thanks, Ari. I'm looking for a second.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Annie. We're going to do a roll call vote. Ari Goffman-Fishman,
Aye.
Sabrina Alpino,
Aye.
Adam Behrens,
Aye.
Annie Strang.
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Adam is ineligible to vote on this.
Oh, yeah, because
Oh, good. Yeah, good.
you didn't watch it yet, right?
I did not watch that part of the tape.
Okay.
Yeah, I only
Okay.
watched it for 2 hours instead of the.
That's this weekend's viewing, right? No, I appreciate the reminder. Do we need to restart the roll call vote or can we keep going?
We were up to me.
We're up to you. Okay. Yeah.
Aye.
Annie Strang.
Aye.
Thank you, Annie. Ben LaValle.
Aye.
And myself, Emily Hedeman, is an aye. And again, that item is continued to March 5th. But in the meantime, there will be a meeting on February 10th at the Roberts Elementary School. The next item that we will be discussing is the green score. I'd like to check with staff, see if they have any introductory comments. I see we have Paula and Emily here again from Innocent Associates. Hello, ladies. But staff, do you have any introductory comments before we pass it off to Emily and team? All right, seeing none. And just to clarify, we're going to be accepting public comments related to the green score. If you do have public comments about Salem Street, I would encourage you to email those to the board. Also bring your questions to the session next Monday, and we will have more opportunity on the March 5th meeting. So we'll try to keep comments focused on the green score. But Emily and Paula, if you have anything to share, we'd love to walk through the green score with you.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. Emily Ennis from Ennis Associates, and I'm with Paula Ramos Martinez, also from Ennis Associates. I'm going to turn this presentation over to Paula.
Thank you, Madam Chair, if I may. So I know that it's late, so I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time. How much time do you think that I can take to present this topic?
What is your max and min?
So it depends on what you tell me. I can make it a bit more, I can shorten it or take a bit more time. What I'm going to try is to make it as simple as possible. Some things are kind of technical, but if you have questions and want to go more deep into something very specific, I can obviously talk about that later. So I was
ideally,
thinking,
like, how much time would you have? Like,
at least for the presentation, 15-20 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, then I'm going to start with the presentation. I will share my screen.
Actually, quick poll for the board. Does anybody need a life break? No? Okay, good. Let's go.
So I want to take a little bit of time on the introduction and the timeline that we have done with this topic specific, then to explain your current zoning and the existing conditions that we have in Medford, and that is from some analysis that we have done. And then to talk a little bit about pervious or permeable surface, what it is and how it is important, and then the green score, and that's what we are here about, the green score. But I need to build it up a little bit so that we can understand it. And I'm going to try to do my best. So in this timeline, we have worked in July 24th, we presented in the City Council workshop where we had a lot of analysis and in citywide in Medford. And some of them were about impermeable surface, permeable surface. I'm just going to take just a second to define that. A permeable surface is a surface that water to infiltrate to lower layers of the soil. And it's important for rainwater management and flooding control and heat management as well. So just to give that definition so that we are, they are telling me that I'm breaking up again. I'm so sorry. Okay, let me
Turning off your video worked.
My video.
And you may want to just share the window.
Yes, I'm going to do that. Thank you.
Sure.
I hope it's better now.
It's a little better.
I usually don't have any problem with this, so I don't know why.
Yeah, and I remember we had problems last time.
Yeah, sorry for that.
A little bit.
What I wanted to say is that permeable surface is those surface that let water infiltrate to lower layers of the soil. And that is going to be important for flood management and heat control. So in this workshop, we make some analysis about the impermeable surface that are in Medford. And we had some issues about finding in your zoning something that will control that issue. And currently, you don't have that. So that's when Green Score came into place. So we presented some analysis in other areas of the United States, but also Massachusetts. So other cities that use Green Score as Cambridge, Somerville, Washington, D.C., and others. And from that, we presented in September 11. And then we did, we personalized, obviously, the Green Score for Medford, and we presented the draft to the City Council on October 9th. And it was approved and referred to the City Board, and that is why we are here today. So why are we here? And this is something that we are going to repeat a lot. We come here to our work right now. It's not only about this topic. We're looking at citywide Medford strategies. We are implementing all the visions and strategies that were identified in the comprehensive plan that was published in 2023. Mm-hmm. And that took into consideration also other plans that have been done in Medford, as the House Production Plan and the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. So here I display some of these strategies that were in the comprehensive plan and that we are identifying and bringing in your zoning. So we are updating it to reflect what was identified in the comprehensive plan. Just to name very quickly, so that what we are talking about is this performance standards for heat mitigation, stormwater infiltration, and soil health, improve the tree canopy ratio, reduce heat island temperatures, reduce stormwater runoff citywide, expand ecological function, etc. So Green Score, what it's going to do is help us strengthen other strategies and will also address these issues directly. What are the requirements that you have right now in your current zoning about heat mitigation, stormwater infiltration, and soil health? You don't really have them. You do have open space, and you have two types, landscape and usable. These are some requirements that you have, but in your open space landscape, you also include walks and terraces, meaning without specifying that these need to be permeable. And so in reality, you do not have any requirement for a minimum of permeable or pervious surface. In this analysis that we did, I just wanted to show the FEMA, and this is the flood hazard layers that are applied in Medford. And you don't have the high flood risk, but you do have the lower one in the areas of Mystic Avenue and Wellington, all this orange, that when we look at the impermeable surface analysis, we see that also these are the higher areas with impervious surface, from 80 to 100%. So if we take into account also climate change and the new projections, this wouldn't help. And that is why we will need to have something to address these issues so it doesn't get worse So what are the options that we would have? Option 1, minimum pervious surface, as we were talking about, surface that allow water infiltrate, and then a minimum open space landscape. That is one option. And option 2 would be the green score. We are recommending to use both, but depending on which case. So if we look, I'm just going to go over, if we look into these two cases, when we have a requirement where the lot coverage, so the built area with impermeable surface is very low, is very minimum, like 30, 40, and 50%. We do have a lot of place on the ground floor to really have a minimum permeable surface. So it's very easy to reach that. And so only with that minimum permeable and with a minimum landscape, so we do also increase the green, that would be more than enough. Now, there are limitations when we are in case B, where we do have a lot coverage that is quite high, and we need to balance between having more housing stock or having more environmental standards. And so in case A, we can use, as we said, but in case B, that's where we find green score to be very helpful. And how that does happen, I'm going to just pass that, is that the green score, what it does is going to provide a menu of different landscape elements, and we don't have to do them all. They can choose any of this, and depending on the development that they have and the requirements that they need. And so we provide that flexibility, or is intended to provide that flexibility, having all these different categories from where you can choose from. So it's not about having a ground level permeable surface, so letting half of the property to be permeable, but that you can really have all these things like bioretention or green roofs or ground covers in trees. So you get credits for all of these different elements. The very important thing here is that every of these landscape elements, depending on their performance, they have a different value, a different, what we call the multiplier. And so if we have, for example, 0.1 is for plants that are ground covers like grasses, it doesn't do a lot for the ecosystem, and ecologically it doesn't have a high standard, but large trees, they do. They help a lot more, creating shade, absorbing a lot more water, carbon, etc. So when we have more complex ecosystem, that's where we get a higher value. Another thing that is very interesting is that we can layer a lot of them. So in the same area, we can have the soil that is more than 24 inches, then ground covers, and then any shrub or trees. And you get elements and credits for all of these things, for the soil, for the ground cover, and for every shrub and trees. In how you calculate it, I'm just going to continue and just say that we did a worksheet where you can, so to make it as easier as possible. So what you have to do is just place your lot size, and then all the elements that you, only the ones that you have, place the area or the number of trees or shrubs, and you will get calculated a green score. The green score is different depending on each district. And it also, it goes from 0 to 100, and usually is around 20, 25, the minimum requirement. So what we have is in case 1 that we talked about, with only pervious surface, we would need the surface, and it doesn't really do a lot for the environment because it's, it does. It's a permeable surface, so it helps, but it's not as helpful as having also trees and other layering that landscape. The applicability, it would be only for new principal buildings. And there are 2 things that we need to take into account. If it is located in a FEMA area, as we see before, this orange area, then it has to go through green score. If it goes through, is a project that has to go through site plan review, it has to go through green score. If it's not in any of these two, then it doesn't have to go through green score. And what we recommend is just to having this minimal permeable surface and the minimum open space landscape. So just I wanted to show a little bit of examples of what a 25 green score would look like with different of these elements and when we start layering them up. And so if we only use permeable paving, how much do I need? If I already have soil and ground cover, we reduce that surface. If we have trees and the soil and the ground cover and the permeable, we reduce also that surface. And if we can also do it with only having a green roof, if the other areas are needed. And then here's just to show the difference between just adding the permeable paving and giving more points as the ecological value of the landscape improves. So from 8 to 25, and you see the difference. So this is the green score. I want to show as well the draft. Let's go very quickly. We have the purpose, the overview, the applicability that we explained, all the zone districts. So it's different to each of these districts because we are reviewing the districts as well. Mm-hmm. Every time that we add a new one, we will bring we will amend the green score. Just wanted to point out this part. We talked to someone from Cambridge, which was part of the green score in Cambridge, and told us that sometimes it's more difficult with affordable housing. So that's why we did this to reduce the minimum required. We will have a recommendation on this to be a bit more, to clarify this a little bit more. But just I just wanted to mention so that when I mention it later, you will understand where I come from. We explain the calculations. We have some general standards for the trees, the soil maintenance, and all these kind of things. And then standards for landscape element, standards for each one of these landscape elements. Then we have some modifications for the site plan review, some amendments so that they also will need to add to the site plan review the green score requirement with all the paperwork and then other modifications. I'm going to pause it here so that you can ask any questions for now. I think it's a good moment.
16 minutes. No, I'm kidding. That was very helpful. My initial question was, are there any communities doing this? And you mentioned Cambridge. What has been the reception to this in Cambridge? Like, how is it working for them? And realizing that Medford is not Cambridge.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has been a good reception overall. They find it a bit more difficult for residential, for single family, etc. And that's why we also decided not to really include them and only go to projects that are in the site plan review. One, because we don't think that it's actually very needed because the lot area usually is very, not a lot is built. So only we want those requirements to make it as easier. And for the rest, the affordable issue that was flagged from Cambridge. But that was it. The reception has been quite good.
Great. Does the board have any other questions? I like this idea. I think it's helpful giving the flexibility. I know that we've looked at menus in other topics. I like the kind of ranking, the weighting of these menu items. Adam?
I had one thing just out of my own personal curiosity with kind of green upzoning places. I know in Cambridge they experimented with curb cuts in areas that were prone to flooding, so that water runoff could then go into kind of planted areas. I thought that was a cool idea when I kind of heard about it and I read about it. I don't know if there's any like public comment on what can be included and not included in the green zoning, but it'd be cool if something like that could be included, or if there was learnings from Cambridge that would be, it's sort of like easy things that could also help people get their score up, that the city would also kind of participate with.
So I haven't seen that in the Cambridge Green Score. Do you mean like the water to go through the surface? Because I think that maybe that is more in public space more than in the private areas.
Yeah, I believe it was in the Cambridgeport area. And I think it was maybe like a pilot that the city had done around curb cuts with the city-owned piece of that land where they plant the trees. And so instead of just planting the tree with the sidewalk cut out, they made sort of like a little bit larger grass area with then a curb cut. And those areas were prone to flooding. So it's not it's not necessarily a recommendation. It's not necessarily an ask, but I just thought that was like a cool way that I know some other areas are trying to address the issue.
Yeah, it's definitely an innovative approach. But just to clarify, the green score is for private development, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Alicia, I see your hand.
Madam Chair, I just sort of wanted to clarify. I think I'm trying to understand what you're saying. You mean like there's a green area and there's a cut out of the curb so the water from the street flows into that green area?
Correct.
That's part of some standard green infrastructure. Like if you were to do a bioswale or something, that's one way that you would water it. And they also sometimes use that for tree plantings. So in theory, you wouldn't actually suggest something to that level of detail in the green score. You would say you should have a bioswale that is properly designed by an engineer. Mm-hmm. And it may be, so like say a big parking lot that like Herb Chambers might include something like what you're describing as part of their bioswale or their tree pit as a green way of doing it. Just so you're aware, that's sort of like a smaller scale than this.
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
I like it though. Ari?
Yeah, I didn't see in the draft, is there any commentary on a ban on designated invasive plants in new plantings and or a strong preference for natives? Because both of those do have substantial impacts on floodwater management. And we certainly don't need to repeat, for example, the calorie pairs.
So yeah, in the standards, in the general standards, we don't let invasive species to be planted. And we also address we give bonus if the plants are native or adaptive species, non-invasive.
That works. Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions from the board? If not, I'm going to open the public comment period. I'm starting to see some hands, which is great. Those who wish to provide comments can use the raise hand function or message Danielle in the chat if you're having technical difficulties. You can also send an email to ocd@medford-ma.gov. Before providing your comments, please state your name and address for the record. A reminder to all meeting participants to please refrain from using the chat function to message any comments to city staff or board members, as that's not part of the public record. However, if you are having audio or other technical difficulties, message staff for assistance. That's Alicia and Danielle. Each participant has 2 minutes to speak. And as a reminder, these comments should be focused on the green score. So with that, I'm going to open up public comment, and I see Zachary's hand raised. Zachary, please state your name and address for the record.
Zachary Chertok at 5 Almont Street.
Mhm.
Thank you, Emily. And the presentation was good. I generally like green score approaches. The first question I have is, are there green score thresholds that are going to be in place for approval for building designs? And I apologize if that was spoken to and I missed it. So I'll start with that one.
So just keep asking your questions
Okay.
and we're going to address them at
The
the end.
second question, and if this does bleed into the zoning, no problem, call it out, table it. How is the green score going to overlay into elements like the IZ setback schedules from before? I don't want to discuss the schedules. I just want a little insight into how they're going to cross over and consider those and factor in together. And will we be presented on that overlay at some point? And I'm done. Those are the two questions.
Great. Thank you. Those are great questions. Any other members of the public with comments or questions? Alicia or Danielle, are there any emails that have come through? Any hands with any technical difficulties? No.
There are no emails, and I have not gotten any messages about anybody having trouble.
Great.
And just I'll say that I would refer the questions to our consultants rather than to me first.
Yes, for sure. Emily and Paula, would you like to address Mr. Chertok's questions?
Yes, I'd be happy to address them from the sort of the higher level zoning perspective. So the green score is applicable to development projects. So if somebody comes in with a new development project, it meets the criteria for the green score, it's site plan review, then the entire project is subject to that. And from the diagrams that Paula showed, you can see some of those strategies are applicable to the site at the ground plane, and others of those strategies are applicable to the building itself, such as, for example, the green or the blue roofs, which would be on either the highest level of the roof, or if it's something that has a sort of terrace structure, could be on multiple levels. In terms of the inclusionary zoning, I think is what incentive zoning rather. I believe that's what you were referring to for the IZ overlay. So the incentive zoning is being applied as we move through looking at the zoning for the entire city. We are looking at whether or not it is appropriate for different areas. It has been applied already to Mystic Avenue. We are looking at it for Salem Street, although I know we are not talking about that particular one, but just to let people know that we're looking at it on a district by district. And the incentive zoning allows for an extra story or two, depending on the district, of height if the development project can meet certain public benefits. One of those public benefits is that buildings are certifiable as LEED Platinum or other such green building scores. So there are many programs out there. There is Passive House. I think LEED is usually the most well-known. Passive House is gaining traction in Massachusetts. There's also SITES, which refers to, the site plans, the landscape. So the idea is that one of the potential public benefits, and again, this is a menu structure, could be a more energy efficient, more sustainable building itself, as well as a green score. So we see the two of those potentially working in tandem. It's not an either or. The green score would be applicable for anything under site plan review, whether or not the incentive zoning is taken advantage of.
So just to clarify that, could they combine multiple forms of incentive zoning? To get,
excellent question. So the incentive zoning, it would depend on the district, the height limit. So although there is a menu of choices for the incentive zoning, for example, if you are in a district that allows for 2 additional stories, you could only stack enough incentives up to get you to those 2 stories.
Okay.
The idea was to have a choice of options because we know that over time, the finances has changed, the specific areas of what people are trying to accomplish change. And so we wanted to give maximum flexibility to the city and to the developer to come to an agreement on something. So that's why there's a menu, but there is a limitation based on the district. You cannot just keep stacking them and going.
Good. All right, we are still in.
There was also a question about a particular threshold from the speaker. Can you speak to that?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I didn't write. I was grabbing a pen and paper as he spoke, so I didn't write that one down. Can you remind me, please?
Zachary, I'm going to unmute you if you can remind us what that specific
Yep.
was.
And do you need me to state my name and address again for the record?
No, but I do
Okay.
appreciate your willingness to.
Just as to whether or not, and this may be more for Alicia and Danielle, but if the city is going to establish a minimum, scoring attainment through either model, whether it's through the score itself or through the land use model, if there will be minimum publishable standards that design has to achieve for approval.
It's 25 points. Yes. Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. 25 points. Paula, you can correct me if I got that wrong. But if affordable housing is part of the project, it would be 20 points. So that is what we're considering and still talking with city staff about now.
Yep.
I'll defer to you, Paula, for anything else.
Yeah, if you want to flash the slide back up, that may be helpful just to remind us.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
But I don't know if it was the slide or if it was the draft.
It will be under draft. So it depends on the district. That's something I said. It's going to be from 20 to 25 commercial, and it's less of the green score. And so we will address per district how much we think should be the minimum. We do have here something that I didn't explain. We have a minimum and an ideal. This ideal of 30 is for that incentive zoning that we were talking about. So you have a minimum that everyone that has to apply to the green score has to achieve, and that can be 20 or 25. And if it's affordable housing, then it can be reduced. Here we have a 20. We would like to have a recommendation, and that changes just a tiny bit. But yeah, 20, 25, and then the ideal would be 30.
Okay. All right, so we're still in public comment period. I do not see any hands raised. Thank you to Zachary for your very thoughtful question. So, seeing no additional public comments, I'm going to close the public comment period for this meeting. And I know there was some discussion because when we initially did the public hearing, Salem Street and the green score were noticed together. I think there is a scenario where we can, if the board was ready, we could vote specifically on the green score and not on Salem Street.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we can also require revisions. So just to clarify, that is another option. Danielle, I see your hand.
I just wanted to add that the green score zoning amendment and the Salem Street Court amendment also have different paper numbers. At City Council, I can. Do we have the green score paper number handy? Because that is a way to differentiate between.
I had that. This is 122, not 115. I don't know if I can find a paper number here. I just have the public hearing notice.
I'm looking for it. Usually when we do the public hearing notice,
Yeah.
it hasn't had a paper number created yet. I always wish that it was there so I could put it in the notice.
Yeah.
Let me, I'm going to go through the council agendas and see what it was. Unless, Alicia, I see your hand is raised. Do you know it or did you find it yet?
I'm looking for it, but I actually just wanted to raise one, make sure one other thing was clear before you kind of moved into any sort of recommendations and stuff. So I just want to make sure it's very clear because we really have it in our head in this board that we're approving things. This is recommendations from the board to the city council.
Yes, you're right.
This will be in the form of some list of recommendations. And just so everybody's clear, one, the city council can choose to take them or not take them. And they have the opportunity to add to change. The last Mystic Ave, one of the counselors made a motion from the floor for a minor change. That is also something that could happen after you've passed it on. If it was dramatic, then it would have to be renoticed and reheard.
That's really helpful clarification. Thank you, Alicia.
And I guess actually I'll say that if this board did anything that was super dramatic, and we're going to also do affordable housing as part of this, right? That would be
Don't tempt me.
That would have to actually be renoticed. That would actually have to start the process over because it was too dramatic. It wasn't a modification.
Sure. Emily?
Yes, thank you. With that, I have possibly a question for you, Madam Chair, or a question for Director Hunt, which is we do have some recommendations for additional definitions that clarify the difference between green roof and blue roof. I don't know if you need us to present them tonight so you can see them and include them in your recommendations, or Director Hunt, if a city councilor could bring them forward to the meeting. I know we had talked about this. I'm not sure, given the week that we've all had, if you've had a chance to review them collectively and the staff on your side. So, but I just wanted to bring it up while we had the opportunity. We could certainly also ask if a city councilor is willing to make that motion on the floor. But I did want to let the CD board know that there are 3 additional definitions, just again to clarify the difference between a green roof, a blue roof, the combination of the two, and also the solar reflective index, also known as SRI, which basically means having a lighter color on a flat roof to reflect the sun off that flat roof. It does not apply to pitched roofs, such as for single family, or none of this, because it doesn't require site plan review, would apply to the lower levels of residential, such as single unit, 2 unit, 3 unit. So this is really just a notification that could, I see your hand up, Alicia, but it's a notification that could happen at City Council as well.
Yeah, Alicia.
Madam Chair, I think that it makes sense for Emily to share that information with the board because the intention of it is to clarify the information that's actually already in front of you, but to clarify it in a way that is documented so that future people reading the zoning have the same understanding.
Yeah. And this information was shared with the board in our packet, but I think if you do have, if you can walk through it for the board, I think that would be helpful, as well as any members of the public that are still tuning in.
Paula, do you want to bring up the definitions?
Yes.
You probably have them handier than I do.
So I'm going by point by point. We wanted to clarify as I said, these projects with affordable housing that may reduce the minimum required green score to 20. And the new paragraph would read as projects that provide more affordable units than the minimum required or provide affordable units with hyper affordability are subject to reduce the required green score by 5 points. So depending on the district, they could reduce 5 points if they provide more affordability and more than what is required. That I think was not clear in the first sentence.
Yeah, I like that. And then for some districts, the minimum required score is 20. So
exactly. So
that makes sense. Okay.
And then the second, as Emily mentioned, we wanted to give a little bit more flexibility with the roofs. So in the beginning, we had only green roofs, intensive and extensive. And then we added the blue roofs. And now we want to add as well the high SRI, as Emily said, the solar reflective index. So we wanted to amend the table to include the high SRI, and instead of green roofs, the category will be named roofs, and to have at least a minimum of 0.2. Sorry, the value of these C4 element is 0.2. Then with this as well, we will clarify the definitions. And so in the Section 7 standards for landscape elements, we would define what a green roof is, what a blue roof is, and also to add certain standards to the blue roofs. We want to make sure that the people understand that blue roofs are high maintenance, and so that you need to really take care of it. So it is an additional, so they have to study if it's economically feasible. We want to make sure that they really work. And then we have the combination of green and blue. And what we really want to say also then defining is that they have to follow all the green and roofs conditions and standards, and that to calculate them, you can sum both with the same area. You can sum the blue and the green, since it is a high cost maintenance, and also it is very good for the environment because it will storage water as well as improve the insulation of the building and many other ecological performance. And then we define the high solar radiation index and when that would be
reflective index.
Yes, it's solar reflective index, so that the definition and some of the standards that need to be followed. So we at least have an SRI of 82 for roofs that are more than the slope to 12. So if it's 212 or steeper, then it shall not be subject to this SRI requirement, and it's not eligible for credit.
And 212 is rise over run.
Sorry?
212 is rise over run.
Yeah.
Great. Remember something from school. Okay.
So this would be the recommendations that we were discussing. I will be happy to go through any more in depth if you want.
Okay. Any questions from the board on these recommendations? They all make sense to me. They seem logical. Okay. Is there any other information related to this that needs to be presented?
we have completed our presentation. Thank you to all the board members for your patience.
Okay, are there any further revisions we want to make to the recommendations that will be shared with the city council?
Nothing comes to mind for me. I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think this is a really exciting way to look at increasing pervious services and open space in Medford that doesn't limit new development. So, as a board, how are we feeling? Are we ready to make a recommendation on the green score? Seeing thumbs. Yeah. Danielle?
I think I located the paper number. It's 24-499. But I wanted to check and see what the Salem Street corridor paper number was, just to confirm they were different. Yes. And now I'm still hunting it down. Alicia, do you remember when it was reported out and to be referred?
They have to be different because they were reported out at.
Yeah, I can't find the date.
Wasn't it this? Sorry, it was December 11th. Oh no, that's the council permitting meeting. Sorry. So if it was in the permitting meeting on the 11th, it must have been the meeting of the 17th. So let me go in there. Here it is. I am now, so it was the 17th. And I can, sorry, it's hard to read their agendas these days.
I guess 24, there was a hearing that night for Mystic Avenue, and that was 24-490.
Oh,
is it November 13th? Agenda item 24-033, zoning ordinance updates with Innes Associates team. They went over the proposed green score zoning ordinance and then a short intro to Salem Street.
Uh, 24-515, offered by Vice President Collins, proposed amendments to the Medford zoning ordinance Salem Street Corridor District for referral to the Community Development Board.
Okay.
So 24-515, that's the Salem Street number.
Okay.
And 24-499 is green score. So
it goes down somewhat good.
That separates them because they were two different papers.
Yes.
They were just combined for discussion purposes, and they were both ready at the same time.
So what I'm hearing from the board is that we're ready to vote on the green score, which is paper number 24-499. So what I'd be looking for is a motion to recommend approval of the draft zoning. No, I'm sorry. Strike that. I am looking for a motion to recommend approval of the green score as revised. So that includes the recommendations from Emily and Paula, the draft that we've seen today. And if you're not ready to vote tonight, then, that's okay.
I so move.
Thank you, Ari. I'd be looking for a second.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Annie. We're going to do a roll call vote. And again, this is just for the green score recommendation, item 24-499. So roll call vote. Ari Goffman-Fishman.
Yes.
Thank you. Sabrina Alpino.
Aye.
Adam Behrens.
Yes.
Annie Strang.
Aye.
Ben LaValle.
Aye.
And myself, Emily Hudeman, is an aye. So we pass the recommendation on to City Council for the green score. Very exciting work. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Paula. Appreciate the work you've done along with city staff to do this important work to help make Medford a more sustainable and climate-ready city.
Thank you very much to the members of the board for passing this back to City Council. We look forward to seeing you for the next round of zoning edits and potential changes.
Likewise. So we're coming towards the end of our agenda. We have 3 sets of minutes that need to be approved. No, there we go. So we have meeting minutes from November 20th, 2024, December 18th, 2024, and then January 22nd, 2025. That was the Salem Street public hearing, part 1. Does anybody have any feedback, revisions for those minutes?
Just a point from earlier. If I missed the January one, do I abstain from that approval?
So historically, that's what I have done, but I don't think you have to abstain from
My
vote.
understanding is that the vote is on the acceptance of the meeting minutes, that you are voting that they have been presented to you and we are putting them into the record.
Thanks.
City staff, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's the direction that we got. So I was like, what's the point then? But if we really want the details, you watch the video. But yes, that is correct. It's you're voting to accept the minutes. And you can, one of the jobs of the clerk is also to kind of like give it the okay, and then the others can rely on it, on that as well. So once we elect a clerk, someone can take that on, that role.
Mm-hmm.
Can I make a motion to accept all 3 together, barring any additional comments?
Yes. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Annie. All right, we're going to do a roll call vote. Ari Goffman-Fishman.
Aye.
Sabrina Alpino.
Aye.
Adam Behrens.
Aye.
Annie Strang.
Aye.
Ben LaValle.
Aye.
And myself, Emily Hudeman, is also an aye for the acceptance of the 3 sets of minutes for the aforementioned dates. The next item on the agenda is zoning updates. City staff, do you have any brief zoning updates? 5 minutes or less?
There's nothing sort of beyond, Paula gave you the timeline, and I just want to repeat that there's going to be this meeting on Monday. I'd love to, I'm going to try and send that to you all, and you are welcome to push that out to other people.
Yeah.
So that would be really helpful.
Do you know if that meeting, will notes be taken? I unfortunately have a conflict that evening, but I'm very interested.
The plan is to have somebody take record sort of all the Q&A.
Sure.
And so I guess the other piece, there'll be a few different things we'll present. There'll be boards that people can put things on if they don't want to talk. There'll be an opportunity for people to ask questions in the group. But also Counselor Kit Collins is working on reworking the zoning webpage in a more graphically understanding, able to digest way. And she's putting together some digestible bits that we can put out there as well, that we'll share as well as soon as they're ready.
Great.
And I just want to add that it's in person at the Roberts Elementary School, and it starts at 6:30.
Yep. Awesome. So if there's no other business in front of the board, we are looking for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting for this evening.
Second.
Thank you. So we're going to do a roll call vote. And I do see a member of the public with their hand raised. We do not have any active public comment periods happening right now. So I'd encourage you to email Medford or reach out to Alicia or Danielle with any comments or feedback. So we're going to do a roll call vote for adjournment. Ari Goffman-Fishman.
Aye.
Sabrina Alpino.
Aye.
Adam Behrens.
Aye.
Annie Strang.
Aye.
Ben LaValle.
Aye.
And myself, Emily Hedeman, is an aye for adjournment. Thank you so much, members of the board. Thank you, city staff. Thank you, public, for joining us. Our next meeting is, I believe, the 19th.